let's talk about the old system of the way people operate now and the way they sell things now, and how functional or how dysfunctional that is. Why don't you tell me a little bit about the way you used to do things?
Well, basically, when I showed up on a call, I would, evaluate the situation, and then I would go out to my truck, believe it or not, and just next to the customer, and I would type them out a proposal and come back in and give them show them the proposal with all the literature for the different, efficiency equipment, air handlers, air quality equipment, and I would give them a base price, and then I'd have a lot of upgrades on the proposal where they could upgrade to a higher efficiency unit. They could add air cleaners, air purifiers, all that type of thing.
So you would go to the call, just get to meet and talk to the customer, ask some questions, some of the kind of scripted comfort questions like, is it too dusty or dry in here? What are you hoping to do here? And get to know the customer a little bit. And
exactly.
Then you leave the call and go in the car. You tell the customer, I'm going to go in the car and make up a proposal, and you actually type it up, and you had a printer in your car, right?
Right, exactly. Yeah, I had like my own little office. And I told them, I hope you don't mind, I have a little home office out in my truck, and I have a computer and everything in there, and I'm going to go out and prepare something for you and come back, and then we'll talk after that.
And then you come in, you come back in, you bring all your literature, because I remember when I first met you guys, you had like 6 different crates of literature in the back of your cars with all the different equipment, furnaces, and stuff like that in it, right?
Yep, exactly.
And then you'd come back in with literature in your presentation, which would be basically a proposal.
Right.
And you would put like the one furnace down you were selected for them, and then a bunch of different options to upgrade.
Exactly. And I would highlight on the literature some of the features and benefits. And we spent a lot of time discussing equipment and options.
Talking about options. Now, in those calls back then, Rick, who did most of the talking, you or the customer?
Oh, I did all the talking.
So the customer listening, you doing all the talking, right?
Correct. Yep.
All right. And then what kind of results did you get from that? Was those good results? Or you still sold pretty good.
I had decent results. I mean, I would close about 45% of what I did, but a lot of times I would sell a base unit, a base system with a couple little upgrades here and there.
Uh-huh. And the sales you're doing now are different than those base upgrades with a few upgrades on them? What kind of options are you getting now from people?
Well, now I do it, now I'm getting more. Most of the time I'm getting a medium, like somewhere in the median, one of my median packages, to high. So I get a lot of high-end packages as well.
And where'd you learn those other techniques before? I mean, when you found yourself doing what you did before with the getting the proposal and literature and that type of stuff and coming back in and making a presentation the old way, where did you get those techniques from?
I'm not exactly sure, Joe. I think I probably picked some of them up here and there, but I think most of it just how I thought it should probably go. I figured, this is what people want to know about the equipment. I mean, I'm interested in equipment. They must be as well. So I think it was kind of half my own thinking and half you pick things up from different, manufacturer training, that type of thing.
What are some problems with that old style of doing things? I mean, if you could say the biggest issue or some of the problems, if you could list some of the issues with that old style, what were they?
Well, a couple of them. One of them is, first of all, you bore the customer, because what I've realized now is the customer doesn't care about all that stuff really. They just want air conditioning and they want, they want to be comfortable. Another thing is when you talk about all those different things, you're really distracting them from what you really want them to do, and that's to buy something from you. Yeah, right. When you start talking about all these different types of things, they give them too many things for them to be distracted on, and sometimes I would not sell it because I gave them so much information they had to absorb it all. Mm-hmm. And what I found was I was forcing the customer into I got to think about this.
So you would get a lot of think it overs at that point.
Absolutely.
And then, I mean, at that point, when you had to think it over, when you had a no at the end of your presentation, what kind of objection handling skills did you have then? Not
really. I'd ask them, when they're going to make a decision, when I could call them back. I really didn't handle the objection that well at all. I just pretty much ran, and I would become the human pest, mm-hmm. and I would call them up 3 times over a period of a month,
right.
and see if I could get them to close the sale.
Well, let's face it. There's a kind of a deceptive nature in the way prospects operate. When they come out there with the customers looking to get your information from you, which you were more than gladly giving it to them, and they were looking to get your price so they could shop it around and see if they can get a better price from somebody else, obviously, right?
Exactly. So I was just acting as a free consultant. And I heard all the time I was very knowledgeable and I gave them more information than anybody else, but then they go and buy it from a cheaper guy anyway.
About 60%, so around 60% of the time they buy it from somebody else at that point.
Yeah, I was really getting used and didn't even realize it.
Yeah. It's almost like a cartoon, almost like a caricature of the way things are going. It's like, I call the method of spray and pray, where you go out there and put it out there and see what goes on, right? And see how it goes. Just go out there and give numbers and hope for the best, more or less, at the end, right?
That's exactly. Because I just didn't know a better way. I didn't know a better way of doing it, and that's how I did it.
All right, now I got some people on the phone now. I know that a couple guys took the training and so forth, and are really anxious to talk to you tonight, Rick, about just kind of asking you a few questions flat out about what's going on and how you changed from doing about 40% close to you're probably, about 70% now, something like that? Where are you at?
75.
75%. So you took it from a 45% close to a 75% close. And the average ticket, did it get higher or lower?
Oh, definitely high. It's doubled and tripled in some cases.
So it's doubled or tripled, and you're closing more. So you're closing more of those opportunities, and the dollar amount has gone higher. As a matter of fact, I remember you saying that the gross profit on those calls I saw from the months of January and February is over 60%, correct?
Correct, yep.
Where a lot of comfort consultants or comfort advisors struggle to get 40%. Is that true? Because back in the old, that was kind of the old model, right?
Yeah, I was shooting for 45% in the past, and now I'm quoting them higher than 60%. But after everything's all said and done, looking at the financial statements for January and February, we came in at about 60%.
Right. So back in the old model, selling, the client says, "Tell me about your product." You kind of spill your guts about all the stuff. You keep talking till you get the white stuff around the outside of your mouth. So your mouth gets dry from talking so much.
Right.
The client asks more questions about the equipment or asked about it's funny how the clients never ask about you personally. Are you the company, right? They rarely ever ask that stuff, do they?
No.
Because they've been trained by other people as to what they should ask, and they keep focusing on the equipment. Isn't that correct?
Right. Yeah, they try to focus on that because in their mind, when you get there, that's what they're going to compare you against. They're going to compare you against other people's equipment.
Right.
It's like comparing. In their mind, they're comparing against two cars. The same issue, right? So they're not thinking about any of the other aspects about quality installation or any of those types of things. They just want to know, how can I compare this guy apples to apples with another guy? Right.
And now, of course, in this way of doing it that you're doing now, your job is to change that environment so it doesn't become an apples-to-apples comparison at all, right?
Absolutely.
So I'd say if you could say number one job of a salesperson is to not allow yourself to be compared as an apples-to-apples situation. Wouldn't you agree?
Absolutely, yes.
All right, good. Now, the seller asks a few clients about. So you ask a few questions about the client's situation, like, is the room too dusty or dry, or is it colder or warm? And usually, a customer isn't very forthright about those situations either, is he? I mean, by asking those questions, sometimes they tell you, sometimes they don't, right?
Right. Yeah. It's really a crapshoot.
Yeah. So the client tries to end the call by looking. So I got to look everything over and give you a call back. Usually, kind of like, well, let me check it out and give you a call back, right?
Right.
And of course, now you as a seller back, if you were a good salesman, you might try and do a hard close and say, but hang on, let me try and close you a different way, and that probably never felt very comfortable to you. Am I correct?
It's just not my style. I felt like if I did my job, I wouldn't have to do that.
So you never got to the point back then when you were selling stuff that you ever got into like a real, I call a hard close situation, where you used car dealership tactics and Benjamin Franklin closes and all different kinds of closes.
None of that stuff felt right to me. It just didn't, my gut feel right. It just felt like, I'm doing something to get them to this point, and now I'm going to try to make up for my mistake by doing something that me or the customer are not going to be comfortable with it.
Right.
And I found I did better off just not hard pressuring, and then a lot of times I did get the job because I didn't pressure them because of the situation I put myself in,
Right. Well, we have a couple of people on the phone right now. I know we had some people who took the training and some people who haven't taken the training. But just so we're talking about the same thing here, Rick, looking at your numbers for the year to date, you come a long way since when I first met you. You were doing good when I first met you, about $1.52, about $2 million sales when I first met you, right? Something like that?
Yes. Yep. Yeah, I think I did 2.5.
2.5, something like that.
Right.
And now the numbers are pretty staggering. Like for January, you did about $550,000, and for February, a little bit over $500,000. So by February 28th, you had crossed $1 million in sales. Am I correct?
Correct.
So many people can't even do that. There's whole companies out there who haven't done that in a whole year.
Right.
So just let me test you real quick. If I said, give me a number, like how much, what's an average week for you? If you're selling that much, how much is an average week when you're out there selling for that kind of a thing, that kind of a month?
Yeah, well, about $125,000 a week is about what I've been averaging.
About $125,000 a week.
Right.
So talking about every single day, if you look on average, if you had you work 6 days a week, right?
Yes, I do. Yep.
So you work 6 days, 120,000, something like that. So you're looking at about $20,000 a day.
Correct.
So that's a pretty normal day to close about $20,000 in business a day. So
yes.
Let's talk to some of the people who are out there right now and open the phones a little bit to some people. I know we have Ian from up there in the Northeast, and we have a gentleman I know from Florida who's down there. Is it Mike?
Yes, that's right.
Mike, and a few other people one guy from Oregon. So we have a couple other people from California. So let's go ahead and talk. Let's allow people to just kind of ask a question at this point. What are some of the questions that are on your minds right now at this point? Ian, you've been with the system for a little bit now, a couple of weeks. We've had a training session we did a couple of weeks ago full time. What's some questions you might have for Rick at this point? Somebody's out there every day doing what you do on a real high level. What kind of questions do you have for him, you think?
Well, I guess one of them would be, always that peace of mind helps me, and I find myself getting better and better with this day by day, even though I'm not necessarily closing the call, or I am closing some calls, equal to where I was before, if they choose my worst option, which was my best option before.
Mm-hmm.
But I find with myself, I took Joe's course. I finished up about 2 weeks ago, and it was great, and I learned a lot. And it seems like when I role-played it, everything was great. Now I find myself a little hesitant, and I'm almost bit by bit. For example, I just got comfortable with, having the customer take a guess at what something would cost. So, I'll say to them, now I'm able to overcome that. Almost like, Joe says, you got to ask for the sale 6 times or, many times. I was having trouble getting them to guess at a number. Now I'm overcoming that, and I'm really getting them to do that. So my next thing is, I'm having a little trouble with it, and this is, I know once I get, there's about 2 more steps to be really successful. I'm having trouble when I know when it's not time to make the presentation on site. It's very clear. They make it clear to me. One thing I'm having trouble with is scheduling the presentation and still having them commit to me, telling me they're going to make a decision. I'm having people tell me that, oh no, even when if you have something that, if you don't like what I have to offer you, would you tell me no? Of course I would. If you like some of the things I have, would you tell me yes? And they would say of course. So then I'll say, when I come out here, we schedule. Okay, what would work for you? And then I'll make the bullshit call to the office. All right, the appointment. But why don't we bump that one? And this is important. This person needs such and such done, and I need to get out here to make this presentation. Very important. And then the girls in the office are just laughing because whatever. And then when I hang up the phone, they'll tell me, they'll say, yeah, well, I'm definitely ready to make a decision, but I'm probably going to need the weekend to think about it.
Rick, what do you find about that? Let's talk about that part of the call. Because in our model, people who are listening to this maybe for the first time, there's usually 2 parts to every call. The first part of the call is to see kind of when I should make a presentation and see if today is the day I make a presentation or if a future day is the day I make a presentation. The biggest thing I would tell everybody out there who's listening to this call for the first time is that if a salesperson in our system can make the presentation of the product on the same day the decision will be made, you're probably going to have about a 65% close rate on those presentations. The challenge is, like Ian is saying, is to get people to take your presentation seriously and to give you that definite yes or no. Now, Rick, I know when you first started out, you had some struggles on that part too. How have you overcome that at this point? How do you make that work for you? Where when you come back that second time, you definitely get a decision.
Well, I think it's what Ian's saying is it's only been a couple of weeks. I mean, with me, I really thought about the principles that you taught me, and it took me quite a while, 4, 5, 6 months of trial and error before I was able to kind of learn how to get the point across without making it sound like a pitch to them.
Right.
So for instance, when I ask people, when they're going to be ready to make a decision, and then they say, well, we're going to make a decision by a certain date. I was like, all right, well, I'm going to come back on that date, and all I ask is that when I come back, that if I take the time to work up a presentation for you, I'm going to go back and sharpen my pencil, come back and give you my presentation. I do the same thing. And then if they say, well, I don't really want to make a decision that day, I say, well, let me ask you, you really want to have this system installed? And then they'll say, well, yes. All right. Well, what is it? What could it be that would be holding you back on that day from making a decision? And what I do is I find instead of me being on the defensive all the time, I'm going to throw it back at them. And that's an easy way you think in your head. What can I do now to make, instead of me trying to convince this person?
Yeah, why are you coming up with the answer? So that's a good point, Rick. So why are you coming up with the answer when you've already agreed to come back a second time and take your precious time to do that? But what's going to stand? I guess the question is then, the answer is not going to come from you, Ian. It's going to come from the customer.
Exactly.
So what's standing in the way of making a decision on that day?
Right. So whenever you ask a question to a customer, you put the ball back in their court, and now they have to come. Now it's not you having to come up with convincing them they should make a decision. It's them have to come up and convince you why they shouldn't.
Right.
Does that make sense?
How did you phrase that, Rick? Did you say what would prevent you from making the decision?
What's holding you back from making a decision that day? And then sometimes I'll take it a step further. I'll take responsibility. What have I done to make you feel like you couldn't make a decision that day?
Yeah.
Have I done something to hold you back from making a decision that day?
Right.
Something I'm doing wrong? Because I don't mind coming back a second time, but if I do come back that second time, all I ask you to do is make a yes or no. I don't even expect you to say yes. I just expect you to make a yes or no.
Right, exactly, yeah.
I always tell people that at that point I would say, Ian, go for the no harder. I would say, let's face it, if you're not going to make a decision that day, I'll make one for you. I'll tell you it's going to be no. If a customer says, listen, I can't decide when you come back on that day, then I say, listen, if I make my presentation, it's not clearly better than the competition, if it's not different than everybody else's, I'm going to recommend you go with the other companies then.
Yeah. And I think it's a softer way of saying no, right?
It's basically I'm going to tell you no. I'm not going to allow you to.
Nobody wants you to tell them what decision they're going to make, so they're going to
fight you on that and say, oh no, I'm going to go yes.
How do you know? Yeah. How do you know I'm going to say no?
Well, because if you don't say it, I'll say it. Let's face it. If I'm not better on that day, you should tell me no. I always tell people, listen, if I make that presentation next Friday, like you told me you're going to do, and you've had 4 other estimates out here, and I'm not clearly better than everybody else, well then you should just tell me no. If you don't tell me no on that day, then I'm going to tell you no, because I'm going to tell you now, if we're not clearly better than somebody else at that point, you should have already gone somewhere else, and I'll call it over. And they'll be like, no, don't do that. I like what you're saying. What do you like so much about it? Well, I like the warranties and the service, and well, then what should we do? You're right back in again. See that?
Right. You see, you keep on throwing it back on them. That's a very powerful. Those are little nuggets that you learn. Like, so now what should I do? Instead of you saying, so all right, let's do this, you throw it back in their court again and say, all right, now what should I do? And let them tell you to leave, or so let's line it up.
Yeah. So let's role play that one, Ian. Like, let's say that the customer says, but on that day I might need the weekend to think about it, and I would say, okay, well that's fine, but I'm going to need to have a decision on that day. So you need the weekend, but I got to get a decision that day. So now what should we do? And just put it in their court. Why are you the one who's got to decide something? Why are you the one? Are you King Solomon? You're just a sales guy, right?
Yeah.
So you made an agreement to come back next Friday and take your precious time to do it, and they say I'll need the weekend. Then I'd say, well, when I come back on that day, I'm going to need if I do come back on that day, I'm going to need to make I'm going to need a decision to be made. So what should we do then? Should I come back at all, or should I not come back after the weekend then?
Right. So this is one thing that I know I've kind of pushed off the appointments, but I wasn't sure how to react to it, and that's why I had that question. Now, one other one, and it's almost the same thing. It's just a kind of a little different twist to it. Is like, I guess when there is when you go and you go through your first 3 steps, you're not going to make your presentation. So you're going to reschedule your appointment, and now
it's impossible for all the decision makers to be there.
On the first appointment.
I went to one the other day where it's like a big house, but it's really a 6-unit condo.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm going to be making a presentation. I got to call her to schedule the appointment because I knew I wanted to talk to you and get your advice as to how to get this. But what I asked her was, don't you think it would be, would it be helpful if all the other decision makers were present when I make this presentation? And she said, oh yeah. But basically, coordinating that's going to be very difficult.
Yeah.
And she can't do it. So I'm like, well, can I come back and present it to you? And she's like, well, why, there's really no need to because, why don't you email it to me and I'm going to go over it. We've done work for this customer before. She is a regular customer, and I would be hard-pressed to believe that she doesn't buy one of my options because I'm going to have a shitload of them. But I want to know in the event that she's not a regular customer, I would definitely be a little more concerned as to how am I going to overcome that.
Well, I'll tell you what, I would be concerned whether or not they're a regular customer or not. And actually, your regular customers are more capable of bushwhacking you than a stranger, because a stranger you wouldn't trust. But your regular customer is the person you would trust. They're the ones who will screw you over worse than anybody because they know they kind of got you. They kind of got that. Rick, don't you feel that way about, like, sometimes the regular customer is like a wolf in sheep's clothing?
Yeah, absolutely. And another thing with that situation, I would say I'd be willing to come back and make several presentations to people, because what I use all the time is I say, listen, for me to try to have you explain to your husband or a committee or anybody else all these options would be malpractice on my part, because you're really not the heating and air conditioning expert. I am, and I wouldn't feel comfortable asking you to do that. So how can we get all these people together so that I can really do my job, because I'm not comfortable you doing my job.
Right. And those are some some pretty advanced things that happen. Thank God every call is not like that, right, Ian? I mean, it's not every call like that.
No, they're not. You're right.
I mean, thank goodness that's not like the normal way it goes, but it does happen often enough where it sticks in your craw, and that's what you're talking about, right?
Yeah, and that's why I was saying, I guess, Rick, and I had that. This was kind of a question I was asking and I never got to. Like, I'm finding for myself, it's like one little step by little step, but once I hit one of those key points, it's there, and I know it's in my head. If I'm in front of a customer, I'm going to hit it every time now. So this is the one I got to get down, because I kind of been backing down from it. I know I'm not presentation that day, but now what am I going to, when I come back and make the presentation, am I going to get a decision? And they're pretty much telling me, no, you're probably not going to get a decision that day. And
so now take it away now at that point. Say, what day should I come back then?
Right.
Don't make the presentation now.
No. So what day should I come back, or what's going to prevent you from making? These are the answers I need to hear.
Right.
Now I got to throw one of these lines out there, and because I haven't done it,
That's good.
I haven't had the answer. I've just kind of been stunned and been like, oh yeah, we'll see. I'll see you next Tuesday.
Yeah. Well, let's face it, Ian. You went from just kind of like your own sales training method of your own method to one of the most advanced methods in the world. So it's going to take. It's kind of like if you were a normal baseball player, like a little league baseball player, now you're in the minor leagues, and to get to the major league level, you little by little you got to learn every day. It's like spring training for you right now. The last 2 weeks have been like spring training, and within about, like Rick was saying, I mean, Rick, when did you feel comfortable with this whole thing?
Well, I was going to say that. I mean, at times I'm still not always comfortable with everything. It's these are principles that you know you should follow, and what you do is you try to apply all those principles all the time. And as you continue to practice it, you'll get better and better at it. Sometimes I knew I was doing things wrong, but as I continue to go on and continue to say, this is something different for me, I have to keep on trying it, you start to find out what works for you and your personality. As long as you stick to the principles, then you can gradually, you can't expect to do all these different principles at once. I mean, already you're probably already doing so much better than before. You had no idea what you're supposed to do. At least you know now that when you're messing up.
Right. And the principle, of course, is when you make a presentation, always get a decision.
Right. Yeah. That's the principle.
So that's the bottom line principle is whenever I make a presentation, I will always get a yes or no, or I won't make the presentation at all. I refuse to make So bottom line, I refuse to make a presentation unless I get an answer yes or no. And I'll come back and make that presentation as many times as you want me to, but I'm not going to make it until you tell me yes or no when I do make it. I'll travel back here 5 times if it means I got to travel back to give you the same presentation 5 times, but I'm not going to leave the presentation behind unless I get yes or no. Right?
That's how you got to think.
That's how you got to think. Yeah, I think that this presentation is valuable. I'm not going to leak it out to everybody unless I get an answer. It's too valuable. It's too valuable. My engineering and my specific way of putting this together was too good, and I'm not going to give it to people unless they've committed to give me a yes or no. And that's the principle there, right?
Yeah. Well, you know what? And Joe, I think if I get through that step, like you said, 60% of the time, or however, I don't know what you said the percentage was, but 65. It's way out there. They're going to buy.
Yeah, it will be.
If I can get through, that's what I'm sticking right. I'm sticking right now.
Yeah. Well, I think another principle Rick was going to talk about tonight was, Rick, you thought that one of the most powerful principles was that when you give something to somebody, you always get paid for it in some way. Meaning you don't just do something for somebody unless you are getting rewarded in some way, right?
Exactly.
Like I remember when you told me a story about some customer who said, looks really good, Rick, but do you guys have a senior citizen discount? If you got one, I'll go ahead and buy. And you said before, go ahead and tell us that little story, how that works.
It's a good one. A couple of times I've used that. I had one where I was with an older gentleman, and he said to me, so do you have a senior citizen discount? And I would have used to said, well, sure we do. It's 10% or 5%, or whatever it is. So first thing I says, well, first of all, if I did have a senior citizen discount, what kind of number did you have in mind? He said, well, I'm making you like 2%. I'm like, 2%. I'm like, well, if I could get you a 2% discount, what would you do then? So before I even volunteered anything, I said, sure, we have that. I made him give me a little commitment. He said, if you gave me a 2% discount, then I guess I would buy. I said, you guess or you would? He said, I still don't let him off the hook. He said, if you gave me a 2% senior citizen discount, I would buy right now. I'm like, all right, no problem. I'll give you a 2% discount. You know, whereas in the past, I might have given them 5 or 10% because here's what used to happen. I said, oh, yeah, I'm going to give you a 5% discount. And then they said, oh, that's great. So that's this amount of money. All right, good. Let me think about that. See, I gave them a discount with no commitment, and then I get nothing left for it, you know. Yeah. Other times, the same thing will happen. People will ask me for a discount. They say, listen, I had one just said last week said to me, listen, if you could take $500 off of this job, I mean, I really appreciate that. I'm like, all right, well, if I could take $500 off this job, what would you do then? He said, well, I would do it. I said, well, all right, let me ask you a question. I'm going to, if I couldn't take off $500, but I could, I'll give you an additional 4-year labor warranty instead of 1-year labor warranty. How would that make you feel? Well, that would make me feel great. I mean, that would be great for me. I said, all right, so if I call my boss now, and I'm going to ask him if I can do this, I'm not going to come back and you say anything different, right? He says, no, if you call your boss and give me an extra 4 years labor warranty, then I'll buy the system. I said, all right, let me give him a call. And then, of course, I call my buddy, Jim Dugan, and I asked him, he said, sure, Rick, no problem. You know, so what I did was, instead of having to give him money off, and really that teaches you, it's not really about the money off. At that point, when you start to get in those type of discussions, they've already decided they're going to use you. Now it's just they want to feel good. They want to feel like they got something for free. It's not about the $500. It's about the customer feeling like they won. And so all you want to do is find something you can give them, but before you give them anything, you want a commitment from them.
Right.
But that's another one of the principles that we're talking about, that as we go through the weeks of doing this, this will be something that we're going to be talking about together. Now let's do a little bit of roll call here and see who we have on the call. So we had Ian already check in with us from the northeast. We have Rick is with us, and we have somebody from the 201 area code. Who's that? I got 0307. Who's that?
That's Bob D. from Waterworks.
Hi, Bob. How you doing?
Good.
And we have who else is on the line? We have we have 781 number 0540 is last 4 numbers. Who's that?
Bob Ronan.
Bob. Hi, Bob. How you doing?
How you doing, Joe?
Good. And we have, let me see, 201, and the last numbers are 7168. Who's 203? 7168, last four numbers. Who's that?
Scott.So.
Scott, how you doing?
I'm well. How are you, Joe?
I'm doing fantastic. How's life in Connecticut? You guys are in near New Haven, right?
Bridgeport.
Bridgeport. Okay, that's good. That's to us outsiders, it's all the same,
right next door.
How about 908 area? I got 908 area code. Who's that?
It's we're right next door.
Who's that? 908. 908. Last four numbers are 2169. Who's that?
Lee.
And who's that?
Lee from New Jersey.
Hi, Lee. How you doing?
I'm doing okay.
Good. All right. So let me see. That pretty much prevents get the whole roll call. So at this point, we're going to talk a little bit about some of the ways the call starts. We talked about the old way earlier in the call. We talked about the way things started before, the old way of doing things, where basically, Rick, you said you went out there, asked some scripted questions, got your presentation together, got some literature, went back in the house, and I call it spray and pray, give them the information, and then hope at the end you could get the sale. That's how it used to go back in the old days, right?
Right, exactly.
So when you go on this call now, what's your first thought now? Is it I'm going to make a presentation today, or let's talk about one of those principles, right?
Yeah.
So is the principle going out there, what's the first call all about? What are you trying to do?
Well, the first thing I want to do is I find out if the customer really needs my services. I have them, a lot of times they convince me.
Mm-hmm.
I find out, why they're even considering having a new furnace, or, and if we service them now, who services it. I don't get to find. Go ahead.
Let's go over it real quick, Rick. So when somebody says, "Hey, Rick, we're looking to get a new furnace," and you say, "So why are you looking to get one now?" Right?
Yeah. Why are you looking to get one new? Well, it's old. Well, how old is it? Well, it's 40 years old. 40 years old. It's been old for 15 years. Why are you looking to change it now?
Well, because this one's just getting old, and we just like to get rid of it.
Oh, okay. Who have you had anybody working on it?
Oh yeah, we used to use Jim's Heating and Air Conditioning up there in Rhode Island. We used them for like 10 years.
Oh, I know. They're a good company. Well, let me ask you, how come you're not using them?
Well, last time we had them out here, we weren't happy.
Oh, really? What happened?
Well, we had some problems with him. Actually, the service guy got angry at me and wound up leaving. I don't know. He got upset, and he actually swore at me in the middle of the call.
No, really?
Oh yeah, he did. Yeah, because our dog urinated on his tools.
Oh my goodness! So how'd that make you feel?
Well, I mean, it's our dog. It's part of the family, and he got angry at him, and he wound up swearing at me because of our dog. And I said, I don't think it was very nice. I mean, sure, he's only a dog. He doesn't know any better,
Wow. So it doesn't look like you're going to be using Jim's again.
Oh no, we're never using those. I'm not even getting a number from him. We're done with
boy.
them.
So when are you thinking of having the furnace replaced?
Oh, we're thinking like in about 2 weeks from now. We're thinking of having it done.
All right, 2 weeks. Is there any reason why you don't want to have it done right away?
Well, no, I guess we could do it right away if you can give us a price. I'd go ahead and make a decision today.
All right. So if I give you a price and you don't like it, what are you going to say?
I'll tell you no, I don't like it then.
All right, great. And if you do like it, what are you going to say?
Well, we'll go ahead and get the job done.
All right, good. So if I make a presentation, I'm not going to get the I think about it or that type of thing, right?
No, I'll let you know yes or no today. That's for sure.
All right, great. That's good news. So let me just evaluate how everything's going on here, and then I'll put together a little presentation, and then
so
we'll go
there you go. That's kind of the first part of the call. Now that's different than what you used to do, right? Because before you'd come in and kind of talk about Lennox or talk about whatever brand you were doing before, right?
Exactly right. Yeah.
And so now we're talking about a different situation altogether. We're not talking anymore about brand names or even the problem itself. We're talking about why you want this problem fixed.
Right. And what you're doing is you're training them without them even realizing to make a decision today.
You've kind of trained them to influence. You've helped influence the decision being made today.
Right.
And so now, looking at kind of what you do now, Rick, you'd say the first part of the call is just to see if we're going to if the customer is serious about making a presentation today. Now, let's say I go back on that call and I said, no matter what, we're not going to do this for another 2 weeks because I'm going to be out of town for these next 2 weeks. I'm going to come back. We're hoping to get it done 3 weeks from now when I come back into town.
Right. Now that used to be a hard situation for me because I used to go in with my computer, my bag, and everything, and I put it in the customer's mind that they're ready to get a price today. I don't do that. Now I just go in with my pad, and I start talking to them, and I never even give them the idea that I was prepared to give them a price today. So when they say that,
so do you hear that, guys? Is that, Rick, you're saying that you don't even give them a hint that they could get a price today at all. You don't let them know I could even give you one yet.
Right,
point.
because I used to go in with my computer, my bag, and everything, and then you get everything right here. Why can't you give me a price right now? It used to make it a lot harder for me. So now I just say to them, well, here's what I usually do. I gather the information, I write it all down, I go back to the shop, I sharpen my pencil, I come up with a presentation for you, and then I come back and make a presentation. Then I go into, when I come back, if you don't like what I say, I go do it that way. Now, again, I've trained them into thinking that I was going to come back in 3 weeks anyway.
Right. Well, let me stop right there. It sounds like one of the principles we need to talk about then is going into the house with very little as opposed to going in with a big briefcase or some kind of huge dog and pony show. Because I know a lot of guys come in the house and they bring with them a big presentation binder and a big satchel and briefcase. They bring the whole dog and pony show on the first time they go through. So you're saying one of the principles would be that at this point, go in with very little. Just go in with a notepad, a pen and paper to take some notes.
Right, exactly.
And just kind of see what's going on, and don't give people the hint that you could give them a price today.
Right, and like Ian was saying earlier, what was his name, Ian, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. You learn. I learned that as I went on because I had a hard time talking to the customer and letting me give them a price today. And I realized it was because I had all my baggage with me.
So the fact that you brought that stuff in influenced people to think that you could give them a price.
Right. And so, again, anytime you're having a problem, you have to take responsibility. And what am I doing to cause this problem? And if you do that, then you can correct it.
Right.
So you look at yourself and say, all right, what am I doing that's causing this always come up all the time? And then you learn to think about that. How am I going to alter that? Well, I'm just going to leave that junk in the truck. You know what I mean? And I'm going to go on my pad. And then once they tell me I'm going to make a decision, say, all right, let me run to the truck and get my computer and stuff. After I do the evaluation, and then I come in and I sit down at the table and I do it.
So that's kind of neat. So actually now you bring in the tools to price the job out only after you figure out that today a decision will be made today.
Yes.
Otherwise, you don't make it even sound like it's possible that one could be. So you're kind of going with the flow as opposed to fighting it. You're telling a customer, yeah, that's fine. Well, here's what we're going to do then. I'll come back when you're going to make a decision on that day 2 weeks from now when you come back in town. And that day I'll expect you to have expect a decision today on that day.
Right, and then also it's a way to tell myself that I'm not there to give them a price. I'm there to sell the job. So why would I bring in all my tools and everything before I know the situation?
Right. Yeah, that's interesting. Do customers
Yeah.
ever question you about where's all your stuff?
Never. No.
They're probably relieved to see you don't have it all.
Probably, yeah.
Cause I think I remember one time it kind of brings up a situation. I was out in Oregon riding with a guy, and the guy had a presentation book. It was about 3 inches thick.
Yep.
And I brought the book into the call with me. I used it for a specific reason. What I did is I talked to the customer, and I asked the sales guy. I said, what do you normally bring in with you when you do a sales call? He goes, I'll bring my briefcase, and you can bring that presentation binder. We're gonna need that too. I said, okay. So we go in there, and the guy starts saying, here's what we're gonna do today. So I'm gonna go ask you some questions. Joe's gonna show you our presentation binder with everything about our company in it. And I stopped the guy. I said, well, hang on for a second now. I said, let me ask you a question, Rob. I can do this one of two ways. I can go through the whole presentation book that's 3 inches thick here, or else I can just ask a few questions. You can buy the job right now. What should we do? And he said, "Oh, let's just do it real quick, and I'll just buy the job."
Right.
So basically, the threat of using the book worked to say that if you don't buy it today, I'll be threatening you to use the entire book and go through the entire book.
There you go. And Joe, can I make a comment about that?
Sure.
I was a huge literature guy, and by doing the system, I've learned no one cares about that literature. All you're doing is boring them to death. Since I've been doing your system, I haven't had one person ask me for a piece of literature.
Wow.
Not one person. I have it in my truck. I keep on waiting for someone to ask for it. And then typically when I leave the call, the customer will say, "Oh yeah, by the way, what kind of equipment am I getting?"
And what do you say?
It's American Standard. Oh, great. Yeah, they don't even know.
Yeah.
And see, I was convinced that the type of equipment and the brochures and everything was important. And really, the customers are like, oh no, he's not going to go through that brochure, is he?
Now, remember when I told you when I first met you that I hadn't put I never put a brand name down on a proposal since 1998. Remember I told you that?
Yep.
But I don't think you believed me at that time, did you?
I didn't. You know, because the first 6 months I had a brand name on my presentations.
Uh-huh.
Well, until the last 6 months I took the brand name right off.
And did it make a difference?
No,
it got better actually, didn't it?
Yeah, it got better. Yeah, because now I get them off of comparing equipment. I don't want them comparing equipment. I want them thinking about what they're going to buy from me, which package they're going to buy. Not, all right, the other guy's quoting this and you're quoting that. Which one's better? I got to get some reports. You just cause all kinds of problems for yourself. There's more for them to have to think about.
Yeah. Hey, do you have is that Mike? Are you there from Florida still? Or?
I am.
How you doing there? Did you have? I'm sorry, I didn't get you on the roll call before. I just realized that. I thought we didn't lose you. You're still out there?
I'm still out here. I'm paying attention, and I've got a page of notes here.
Do you really? Do you have any questions so far? I mean, you're on the outside fringe of this. You're kind of listening in for the first time. Any questions? Any things that have struck you that you want to get clarified on at this point? Because we're coming down to our last quarter here, our last 15 minutes.
Right.
We'll kind of touch base with you guys in the crowd now to see if there's anything we want to touch base on. Mike, what do you think?
Well, I like everything that Rick has been talking about, and he's mentioned just a few things, but he's mentioned that his presentation is going to be better. Mm-hmm. And so I would like to hear just a few minutes of that presentation. Obviously not the whole thing. That's not going to work, but just I'm going to, if we were still role-playing this and I go, well, I want to think about it. That's fine. I'll tell you what. Then, I would just like to hear a little bit about
that's a good way to do it. Let's do this. Let's do a little, we could probably do a little bit of a mini presentation that, actually the funny part is, Mike, and everybody else listening to this, I mean, Rick, when you do the entire presentation from start to end, how long does it take usually?
5-10 minutes maybe.
Isn't it funny, Mike? I mean, the funny part is that right now everybody's spending 20-30 minutes on this part of it. Right. We spend maybe in our thing, maybe 5 to 10 minutes at the most. And like I was on a call in New York. I was in Westchester. I sold a $157,000 job in 20 minutes. Yep. And so it's actually a very simple presentation. When you hear it, there's a lot of principles behind it which we haven't talked about tonight. But I think we can do a little sample of it so you can kind of. I can see a little bit of it, and you can hear a little bit of it. That's fine.
Some of the main points.
Yeah, we can cover a few of the main points there, and this is a big part of it too, because you're right. You're very perceptive, Mike. Is that you're very perceptive in the fact that the presentation is got to be different than what everybody else is doing. If you're doing the same thing, if you're doing the same presentation that other companies are doing, but just charging $20,000 more for it, you're in trouble.
Right.
You are in big trouble, Chief. There's no way you're going to sell that job if you're doing the same thing but just charging more money. That's just a disaster formula. So why don't we take it from a platinum system, Rick? You want to do it, or should I do it? What do you want to do?
Yeah. Let me just. I'll start off. What I do is I have a laptop that I flip. It has a screen that flips around so the customer can see it, and I do a PowerPoint presentation for them. And what I do is this is our Platinum Plus option. Now, this is going to be higher in price. The reason why is a lot of people have requested us to include extra labor warranties, extra material warranties, and service warranties along with the package. And not only that, it's the best of the best equipment. It's the highest efficiency equipment, and it includes the best air cleaning options, the humidification options. And it's got the best of everything. It's the absolute best. So I'm going to tell you, this first one's going to be expensive. But you know what? I want to show you the very best. I don't want to prejudge that you don't want the best. So let me show it to you, okay?
Okay.
Sure. Here's the Platinum Plus. Boom. This is a premium efficiency. This is the highest efficiency two-stage air conditioning you can get, with a variable speed air conditioner with a humidifier control, with 10 years all parts, 10 years all labor, 10 years VIP service, and we would come to your house every year. And we do all the maintenance. We do an 18-point checkup. We clean everything. We blow everything out. Plus, if you pick up the phone and call us, you're a VIP. We come right away. That's it. It includes the best air cleaning purifying system. It includes all this.
All the pads and filters.
All the pads and filters for 10 years. It includes bulb changes for 10 years, immediate filter replacements for 10 years. Everything. You couldn't write me a check for 10 years on this system. Everything's 100% covered.
Okay.
How much do you think something like that would cost? Oh, I don't really want to tell you that. Wait, really, come on. I'm not showing it to you to you guess. So what do you think that would cost?
$13,000.
$13,000. Hey, let me ask you a question. How much did you pay for your last car?
$32,000.
$32,000. Boy, I wish I could do it for $32,000. Let me show you. Look, it's only $21,000.
Okay.
Now, what do you think the customer does then?
Well, obviously, I think that they because they priced themselves a little lower, that they just kind of sit back and they're waiting for something else, maybe.
Yeah,
exactly.
what they do.
What Rick has now is 5 more options.
Right, exactly.
And those five options. If you had the one at 24, the next one would probably be like 19. The next one would be like 15. The next one would be 12.
And
the next one would be 9.
Yeah.
And one would be 7,500 probably.
But there's an important point there. Every time the customer goes, oh, that is expensive. See, I told you. See, now I got my first agreement with the customer.
Right.
See, now I bonded with him because, yeah, we laughed about it. Yeah, it is expensive. Every once in a while they won't laugh to say, that's the one I want. Yeah, I mean,
okay.
most of the time they'll say, yeah, that is expensive. And now I'm on a better level with that customer because we have something we agree upon. Don't you agree with Joe?
Yeah, what happens is the first time when you show the option, you said 32,000. I say no, it's only 24. So what I did there is that's called law of contrast. See what Rick did there, Mike? He got you actually to guess higher, even though you said 13,000.
Right.
He got you to say 32,000 just for a moment, and you were kind of freaking out a little bit. 32,000? No, come on, it's only 24. Oh, so now he's a hero, right?
Right.
And then here's the rest of the options here. The one for 19,000 is the same as above with 5 years of the same thing for 19. And if I do the thing with a little bit lesser grade equipment, don't do the surgical room air quality, I just do the normal air quality, that's only 12,000. And here's our silver option, which is 9,000. Here's our bronze, which is 7,500. So what should we do?
Right.
We shut up.
Okay,
Right.
so your presentation strictly is on the numbers. So what's happening, I say on the numbers, a little more involved in that. But so as far as
you're right, though, because if I took a sheet of paper, Mike,
yeah,
and I handed the customer that whole option sheet from 24,000 down to 7,500,
sure.
Guess where their eyes always go? They don't care about what you're doing. Guess what the first thing they're looking, just like you would look at, we all look at it, right?
Always looking at the price.
We always want to see what the price is.
Yeah.
And so that's the thing that matters, and that's the thing that, so what the customer then says is they go, hey, Rick, what's that one for 12,000?
Right.
And then Rick says, well, Joe, that's a good option. What do you like about that one? Exactly. And then the customer sells you that option. He says, well, it's the same as above. This is still the premium stuff, right, Rick, except for it's got, instead of 5 years, it's got 3 years. I can do it out to 5 years. I can do it 3 years. So what should we do then? Well, let's go with that one.
Yeah.
Let's go with that one.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And so that's what happens. The customer, what you're doing is the customer finds his own way, Mike. And that's a good question because here's the way I put it to Rick and I put it to everybody. If you're a salesman who just picks one furnace or one air conditioning unit and then tries to add a bunch of other options on top of it, I call it like spray and pray, where you're doing the one furnace and one AC, selecting one, and then saying, here it is, here's the one I'm selecting for you, and here's some other optional stuff you can do on top of that. Those options nobody ever looks at. Very few people look at those options as viable because they look at it like, if you weren't serious enough for me to buy that in the top one, then why are you even putting that stuff out there? It's kind of like going to Best Buy and buying a plasma TV, and then you already got committed to $2,800 for that plasma TV, and then you're at the counter with the kid who's checking you out, and he goes, we could do an extended warranty for 3 years on that for $169. What do you always say to that?
No.
Yeah, nobody ever buys that. But if you did the opposite, the stupid part is if Best Buy would sell so much more warranties, if they did this, if they said, plasma TV with brand new 10-year warranty, $3,200, and then they said price underneath it, $2,800 with 1 year warranty. Right. Guess how many warranties they would sell that way?
They would increase them drastically.
Yeah, because everybody there's a group of people that would commit to that higher price. There's a group of us that would look at the higher price and say, what's the difference? $300? Sure, let's go ahead and get the 10 years. I mean, you can see the price difference. The difference is it's just presented differently. And so that's what you're doing a little differently than the other way of doing it, where you're coming up with a full-blown option. And that's how the presentation goes, more or less, right there. That's how it kind of sounds. And
so you're taking care of pretty much all of your the client having any questions or dragging their feet with all the other questions before you ever get to your presentation.
Right, and the biggest thing is that you're right, and the biggest thing is that you're educating the customer by using your presentation. There's no more education in the background. Like there's no more Rick getting white stuff around the side of his mouth talking about how good of a brand American Standard is.
Right.
All he does is give all the options, and the customer selects it and says, "Well, tell me about that one there for $7,500." And then Rick just says, "What do you like about that one?"
Yes.
And then the customer sells him. He never sells the customer, right, Rick?
Exactly. It's almost too easy.
It's almost like Rick, you told me one time, it's like an unfair advantage, isn't it?
It really is. It really is.
Yeah. And so with that method of doing it, you've taken your sales time. I mean, would you say we start off the conversation talking about the old way of doing things and the new way of doing things. Rick, how long would you say an entire presentation the old way, starting from the time you got to the house, the time you made a presentation, the time you sold it, how much time did it take back then for one job to take place, and how much time does it take now, would you say?
Well, I would say it would take a couple hours. I mean, for the time I did all my, because I had to type the whole proposal out and print it and give it to them and go a couple hours. Now, I do the presentation, sell the job, do all the engineering, probably in an hour.
So you cut your time in half, you'd say.
Yeah, and in the presentation process, from the time I'm in looking at the presentation is probably 45 minutes.
Wow. So imagine if you imagine doing the old way and selling. I mean, let's say you're on track to do $6 million. You did $500,000 in January, $500,000 in February, and who knows where you're going to wind up in March. But let's say you do $6 million. If you did $6 million the old way, how many hours do you have to work a day to do that $6 million? Would you say?
Just not enough time. It's impossible.
It wouldn't be. There's no way. That's why when some of you people may hear somebody one person selling $6 million in a year, you think it's impossible. Based on the way you're selling right now, it is impossible.
It is, right? Yeah.
There's no way somebody in a traditional method of selling could sell $6 million in 1 year, because you would be working more than 24 hours a day, just going through all the stuff you do right now with the presentation books. And imagine how sick you'd be hearing yourself talk about the presentation book, about your company, and about how great your company is, and how many times you'd be saying that over and over again.
Right. Yeah.
To me, the biggest enemy of a salesperson today is the presentation book.
Right.
I think
so, yeah.
Just think of the old days, Rick. Didn't you get tired of hearing yourself talk about yourself?
I'm so sick of making that presentation. I couldn't stand it.
I mean, I did sales full time. I sold $1.4 million at my peak the old way. I was trained by I won't say the brand name of the manufacturer, but I was trained by a boot camp in Texas, and I was also trained in one from Syracuse, a company that is based in Syracuse, as you guys might know. I won't mention any brand names, but I'll tell you what, I went to all the training I could go to, and I had the presentation books and the whole thing like that. And I tell you what, I got sick of telling people how many years I've been in the Chamber of Commerce and how I'm president of Lake County Heating and Cooling Association. I teach at the college, Lake County. I just got sick of hearing myself talk about myself.
Yeah, can I say something about that, Joe?
Yeah.
Here's the difference. Here's why I can sell so much. Because I'm only spending my valuable time, the asset of my time, and my talent in front of people who are ready to make a decision. The reason why my closing ratio is 75% is because I don't quote everybody anymore. Once I realize they're not going to give me a yes or a no, I don't even give them a quote.
Hey, Rick?
Yeah.
Quick question. This is Gene Cattell of the column. I've been listening to you. You've been doing a great job. One quick question. What kind of pre-qual do you do on the phone?
Oh, that's huge. I don't do any pre-qual on the phone. I've trained a girl in the office who does a whole bunch of pre-qualifying questions. She asks them when they're going to be ready to make a decision, and then she will schedule the appointment closest to when they're ready to make a decision if possible. She'll ask them if anybody else is quoting a job, who and when. You'd be amazed how many people tell you exactly how many quotes they're getting and who's doing it. She'll even ask them if they want to be pre-qualified for credit. She'll ask them, and you'd be surprised how many calls I get. Yes, these customers already been pre-approved for $10,000 credit. She also will give me an A, B, C, or D. This is an A call, a B call, a C call, a D call. And as she's qualifying and she's getting A calls, she's calling the B's in the C's and rescheduling them.
So bottom line is this is a thing that we developed with Rick and his company that Rick and I together redesigned the sales system, right, Rick? Because back in the old days, I remember when I first went on ride-alongs with you guys, the first 8 calls I went on weren't even calls. They were like, we need new heating register. Yeah. We need heat in the basement. That type of thing.
Add a heat in the basement, exactly.
And so we wound up saying we need to qualify these calls better. So that's a good question, Gene. So what you do now, basically, Rick, is we have a grading system we developed, which is basically both decision makers are going to be present. They're pre-qualified for financing. They're going to make a decision today. That's an A lead. That goes right to the top. Right. Now, if we have 3 D leads on the schedule right now, guess what happens to those D leads? The D lead would be like only one decision maker present. They aren't deciding for 2 weeks, and they can't get approved for financing. So guess where that person gets? Guess who gets rescheduled? The A lead or the D lead, Gene?
Yeah, definitely. A D could get pushed off, so an A could slide in the spot. You
got it. And so this is like that's another unfair advantage that Rick has, is that he's basically changed the selling environment from taking any crappy call that comes in and replacing it with the best call at the best. So basically, the one thing you can do to help people is make sure that you're placing your best person in front of the best customer at the best time.
Right.
And that's the company's responsibility. The salesman can help too, though. He can also, if it wasn't, the company didn't do that, you could do a fair amount of that pre-qualifying on the phone yourself before you go out there, I suppose, right?
Well, see, I do that all the time because I do a lot of night calls. So I'll get a call from the office. Customer called, they have no heat. You got to go out there right away. And I'm like, whoa, hold on, Sam. Give me their name and their phone number, and let me give them a call. And I call them up, and I start asking all those questions. So what's going on? You have no heat, so what are you going to do about that? You're going to make a decision tonight. We want to be qualified. Both decision makers there. And if I get all negative comments, I'll say to the customer, well, there's really no reason for you to come out there this evening.
Right. Why go out there tonight if you're not going to get? I mean, it's a pretty big use. It's a pretty big use of Rick's resource, I would say, Rick. I mean, you're a pretty important guy in the company, so to use up that resource at 12 o'clock at night or 1 in the morning, you don't mind doing it, but all you expect out of it is what? A positive result.
Yeah. If I'm going to go out there at 12 or 1 o'clock at night, I expect them to make a decision that night. If they're not, then I don't go.
You've done that? Gone out 10, 12 o'clock at night, give them a price, and
Rick just worked. He just had a day where he worked 23 hours, right, Rick? You said you started.
Yeah, I did. Yeah. See, this is probably good for another meeting, but I have to give half my sales credit to the way that we set the company up. I am in front of a majority of people who have no heat the majority of the time because I am on a first-name basis with every service tech we have. Service techs call me in my house 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 o'clock at night. And they introduce me to the customer on the phone. I get in my car and I drive to the house at 12 o'clock at night, and I get $15,000 for a boiler any other company gets $5,000 for. Because I'm there at night, and we're going to be there the next morning at 7 a.m., and they're going to have heat by 1 o'clock in the afternoon. It's a huge advantage.
Yeah, because the service is better, that's why it's better.
Right, first-class experience.
Right.
You know, people flying a plane, it's the same plane, but they pay for first class because of the service they get.
That's
right. And that's exactly how we set up our business.
But you're right. So, we can go over that different night. Matter of fact, we can talk about that in the future meetings because that is
it's a huge point.
That qualification is a subject of its own for sure.
Right.
May I have a question?
Sure.
How you guys generate so many leads?
Generating leads from service you're talking about, or from just estimates and so forth?
Yes.
Well, I mean, really what it comes into is that the service guys, Rick, I mean, it's important that the service people are on the same team as you are, and that right now when your service guys go on a call, if the service people are quoting cheap options all the time, then the customer will never be inspired to want to replace the equipment because it's always cheap enough to fix it. So if you say, I fixed this boiler for $300, well, people are going to be like, yeah, just fix it. But if you're going to quote the same repair with better warranties and renovations, let's say I go on a boiler repair and it's got a 40-year-old pumps and it's got relays that are 30 years old, and I quote a complete renovation for that boiler, and that comes in at $3,000, $3,500 for the repair. Guess the next thing the customer says when I quote that kind of number? The customer says, "Hey, I better be cheap. Why don't we go ahead and just replace it? If it's going to be $3,500. Let's face it, Joe. This thing's 40 years old. I don't want to pay $3,500 to put into this thing. Can we just get a sales guy out here and have him talk to me about this?" And so now that's when the sales guy calls Rick, and Rick then sees if we're going to go forward today or not. Right, Rick?
Right, exactly.
I mean, it's not like everybody's got a cracked heat exchanger. It's just that sometimes they have. If the service guys are doing their job and quoting the options the right way, and there's a high enough option, most customers are going to generate their own lead. They're going to say, I don't want to fix it. I want to replace it. And
exactly.
that's where the salesperson comes in and then quotes his options too, which are, of course, many different types from the top to the bottom. One thing I will say this, I want to finish with this. It's important to realize that all service people and all salespeople quote the best option to each customer, meaning the one that has a 5-year warranty, 5 years of planned service for service calls, and complete renovation of the ignition system. Let's face it, if we have a hot service igniter that's gone bad, but the entire ignition system with gas valve is like 15 years old, it doesn't make sense not to renovate the whole system. All the parts are 15 years old. Why are we leaving them in there? It's like having a mechanic with a bad spark plug, only replacing one spark plug. So the technician's got to be in tune with offering as much quality service as possible and packaging as much as possible, and then the salespeople got to do the same thing. But you have to quote the best thing, and you have to quote the worst thing, meaning that you got to give people the package of all the complete solutions, but also the cheapest thing they could do too to compete with the competition. This way, the biggest mistake you could make is if you only quoted the high options and didn't quote the low options, because what would happen then is that now you're just ripping people off. You're just quoting things high and not giving people the opportunity to go cheap either. Right, Rick?
Yeah, it's absolutely
Rick,
correct.
how many service techs do you have?
We have about 12.
12. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so 12 service techs, and they generate enough leads for him to do about two. You do about two new leads a day, right, Rick?
Yes.
About two new leads a day he does, and with those two new ones a day, he's done about $500,000 a month.
$500,000 a month.
$555,000 actually in January, and $515,000 in February.
That is great. That's incredible.
That's why we have him on the phone. So, and that's what the training is. And that's what the training is all about.
Students, both.
Excuse me?
I said you both teachers, and you are the teacher, the best teacher, and Jim is student, the best student. So.
Well, thank you.
I appreciate it. And it really is. And I have to give all credit where credit's due. Absolutely, Joe's system has revolutionized everything I do.
Well, I always say when the student is ready, the teacher will appear. That's what I say. When the student is ready, the teacher will appear. And so, in your case, Rick, the student was ready, and so I did appear, didn't I?
Absolutely.
All right, we're going to end this meeting for today. Thanks everybody for showing up, and I appreciate your attendance.